Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a fuck about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation.
Steve, how are you?
I'm very well, Tony, but probably a little bit cooler than you are.
I know. Are you in your office or are you in your special shed today?
No, I've been doing a few additions to my little shed. I'm now 2 sheds, Steve, by the way.
2 sheds, Steve. That is properly living the dream.
My studio now.
Are you good? Excellent. Well, you know, these are always my favourite podcasts talking to you, my absolute favourite. And you are the Zestology guest who's been on the most.
Yeah, you told me that last year, and I have to say I'm pretty honoured, and I'm glad you enjoyed them.
Oh, yeah, I do. And this is a tradition, isn't it? A New Year's Day podcast, which we record quite early.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're recording this a little bit advanced. So we're not actually recording this on New Year's Day as you listen to it. But Steve, what's going on with you at the moment? How do you reflect on 2023, and what are you sort of aiming for in 2024? Anything particular that's important to you apart from accumulating more Bitcoin?
Well, the way the pound is diving, probably I could do better in Zimbabwean dollars or whatever they call them.
Yeah, get some of them as well.
Yeah, but no, life's not about money. I know it's easy for us to say that. And certainly, you know, we've all got to be able to survive and pay our bills and eat and all that kind of stuff. And knowing that there are so many people in the world who are really struggling. I mean, to us, it's almost like minor inconveniences compared to what a lot of people are going through. So what was this year like? I think it was a strange year because, you know, last year we were coming out of COVID and going back to like a more normal life. And this year, in some ways, there's been a little bit of from my perspective, there's been some stagnation, or maybe a better word would be consolidation.
That's a good NLP reframe, that one, Steve. I like that. Yeah. We don't say stagnation, we say consolidation.
No, not a good word. And that's from the business point of view. And there are a lot of things that I needed to do, you know, to invest in myself as a coach, and also in the back end of my business, you know, with websites and all of that stuff that seems to take forever and gets increasingly complicated.
Yeah.
But it's you know, having said that, it's solid, and I'm enjoying the kind of people that find me by one way or the other. On a personal note, you know, I've got a nuclear family. I mean, my daughter lives in Australia with her family, and so we enjoyed going out to her at the beginning of the year and seeing 2-year-old, now 3-year-old Henry, who's a bit schizophrenic. One day he's an Australian, the next day he's English. Depending on which football team or cricket team he's watching. And my son lives in Thailand, so that keeps us. But fortunately, we have Zoom and Facebook and all those other ways of keeping in touch.
Yeah. It's interesting. You talk about the ever increasing amount of back end stuff there is to need to run a small business. And you and I are both businesses of one, aren't we? And that's the same for a lot of people that I speak to on this podcast. And I've noticed an increasing amount of conversations over the past year have been with people sort of saying, well, how much do we do and when do we say stop? And I think that is a pressing need for so many people now, because the world is set up for us to be as productive as possible, isn't it? We can spend 18 hours a day running our business and being productive if we want to, but that's clearly not going to make us happy. So when to say, all right, I know if I spent another 4 hours on my website today, I would be, in a better position tomorrow. But actually, I want to look after myself as well, and that's quite a hard thing for people to get right, actually.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because sometimes, working on my own like I do and you do, you get wrapped up, and you don't know that the world is full of a lot of single people running their businesses, and you obviously come more in contact than I do. So in some ways, I'm kind of reassured that they say the same kind of comments, because you do reach this point when you think, well, that you got to say stop, because you'll never have your business running perfectly.
Yeah.
And no other business in the world works perfectly. But if it's your own business, you take it very personally. And even, if you're not a perfectionist, which sadly probably I think we both are to some extent, you can be working longer hours than, frankly, you want to and the business needs.
Yeah. It's difficult because obviously we've moved to Portugal, very much a lifestyle decision, and you have lived in Portugal as well. So I enjoyed chatting to you in the build up to moving here and today before we started recording as well. And it makes it even more ridiculous if you overwork here, you sort of think, hang on, why did I move here in the first place? To spend more time with the family, to go to the beach more, to spend more time outside, and to enjoy life more. That's it. So if you're still overworking, then you're missing out on all of that.
You are missing out on all of that, and those are all the things that make us the person we are.
Yeah.
And I think there's a choice here. Do I want my business to be the best version of that it's possible, or do I want to be the best version that's possible? Yeah. And I don't think you can have both. Or if you can, I don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really hard.
Because, I mean, this year for me, I told you about the business side, but on the personal side, I want to grow as a person. Yeah. And I think to me, it's finding the balance between the business being the best it can be and me personally being the best I can be.
Yeah.
And not an easy balance to get right, but it's important that we get it as right as we can. And that's what you were. I mean, we have to enjoy life. That is. Yeah. And when we connect to nature, when we go for our swim every day of the year, like you do, that's all helping what I call the trilogy of mind, body, and soul. If we can get those three things in balance, then we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I didn't really. It's funny, isn't it? Because at times our New Year's Day podcasts are focused on goal setting and getting stuff done. And in some ways, this is about doing less, striving for balance. And as you know, I've spent a lot of the last year putting together this course on it's called the Healthy AF Method. And it's really about mindset and health and how they link together. And it is a decision, as you say. It is absolutely a decision. There's no doubt people can achieve extraordinary things working 18-hour days, but that is not the same as living a healthy, sort of pain-free, happy life. So that is a decision. Yeah. I was on the beach with a friend a few days ago, and she said to me, my theory is you should work as little as possible to have enough to live on fairly comfortably, and then stop and enjoy life. And I sort of thought, yeah, but what about my business? How am I going to grow? How am I going to record more podcasts and get 1 million listeners?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's one thing, it's only that.
Yeah. It's a dilemma. Yeah. So, but it's interesting because I think you do get the balance right. And you're still very successful and doing plenty and always got new projects on the go, and you've written 7 books.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're not a slouch. You're not a slouch, Steve.
No, but with my the guilty voice echoing in my ear, I haven't written a book for 5 years, Tony.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I was just talking to an author this morning on this subject, And I just said, he was saying, oh, surely you're going to write another book. And I say, well, I don't feel like it at the moment, but if I do, I know it's going to be a short book. It's going to be a simple book, and it'll probably be better than all the other 7 put together.
I don't know. I've really enjoyed your books. They're absolutely brilliant. So I'm not sure about that, but yeah, because I remember when we were sitting in was it shed number 1 or shed number 2?
Shed 1.
Shed 1. Okay, so when I was at your house last time,
I call that sound stage 1, by the way, too.
Sound stage 1. Okay, yeah. Well, it's soundproofed, isn't it? Is it soundproofed?
It's partially soundproof, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's lovely. It's a very calming space. And did you decide it's slightly too small, shed 1, to do personal consultations in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's okay for that. It's a bit cozy.
Yeah.
But the main reason is that I've got I think when we last recorded the show, I mentioned that I was on a Keep Fit drive because I'd ruptured an Achilles tendon and stuff. And the result of which, I have a rowing machine that I use every day, and I've got a treadmill, and that wouldn't all fit in shed 1.
Yeah.
So I had to have shed 2 for that.
Excellent stuff. Yeah. So when we were in shed 1 last time, you said to me that you weren't exploring particular avenues around AI, and you hadn't really been delving into ChatGPT. And you said, I'm trying to master the things that I do. I'm trying to do that really well, which doesn't leave that much time for learning a whole new area like ChatGPT. So bearing all that in mind, in 2024, what is your focus going to be? Apart from seeing to your family in various far-flung places of the world, what are you hoping to work on, and what are you hoping to focus on in terms of goal setting as well? Because this is the Goal Setting 2024 podcast.
It is. And I remember, this New Year's show we do every year, it's been on a journey, and it's actually changed a lot from the first one.
It has, yeah.
And the last few, which are the only ones I can really remember, they've definitely moved. They definitely have highlighted that it is important to have goals, but it's the way you think about the goals rather than what the goals are that I think has changed.
Yeah.
And so in my case, in earlier years, and I think you as well, the goals were very much in the front of our mind. And this is what gave us the day-to-day drive and focus to do the stuff we do. And now I think the goals are still there. They've changed, and they're lying a bit deeper in the brain or more in the back burner. And in fact, that really sort of segues into what I was going to say. What is my goal for 2024? This time last year, I said I've only got one major goal for 2023, and that was to reduce my ego as much as I could. And you might have told me that's going to be tough. Well, it has been tough, but it's better than it is. And I'd say compared to most people, I think my ego probably is pretty low key. So I'm going to carry on with that 2024, and I'm going to add to it, and I'm going to listen more. Listen more to myself, but particularly I'm going to listen more to all the people that I come into contact with. And this is particularly important when you're a therapist or a coach, because I think people, what do they call them? I can't quite remember the phrase, but when you're focusing outwards on the person in front of you, you become very observant. And I think you become rather intuitive, because the two might even be linked. And as a therapist, the client will tell me pretty much everything that I need to know to be able to help to move them forward. Very often, too much sometimes. But sometimes it's not the words that people use, but it's the way they use them, the context they use them, and which part of the brain is this voice coming from? Is this dialogue coming from? And and maybe unconsciously, I was thinking about this call a few days ago, and I've gone back to the last chapter in my last book, The Psychic Revolution, because I tried to end the book on a simple little message that even if people hadn't really followed some of the stuff before, they could remember three things. And I'd forgotten about this last year on our call, on our podcast. But the three things were: let go of ego. Well, that's stuck somewhere. So that was last year. The second one was listen more. And that's just kind of come up in my mind to be, more in the moment.
Mm.
And the third one, I probably should keep this up my sleeve for next year, but I'll, give you a sneak preview. The third one is going to be the third one in the book, and that was talk less.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're already a very good listener, though.
I'd like to think I am. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something me and Faith talk about all the time. It's such a skill, and actually, a lot of people aren't very good listeners. And when you sort of when you embark on a sort of story and you just get cut off, you sort of think, oh, that was, it's frustrating actually.
It is, and as part of that, where when I'm traveling, I love being a people watcher, and I love watching if there's two people talking, the dynamics of the conversation, because you've got one person there who's usually the talker, and then there's another patient one. You can see them kind of rolling their eyes, and they're just listening, and they get a comment in, and then the other person will say, "Yes, that's perfect," and then they use it to go onto the voice.
Yeah.
Well, you can chapter 2 of their life.
Yeah.
And so and I'm no different, and that's why it's there, because particularly the subjects that I have passion about. I mean, I do talk about them.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, we have to, once we've caught ourselves, then, that hopefully is enough.
Yeah.
Interrupting this podcast for a moment to tell you that today's podcast is brought to you by my signature program, the Healthy AF Method. It's all about healing, optimizing and transforming your health with NLP and energy psychology. And if you go to tonywrighton.com/healthy, you will find all the details on the Healthy AF Method. It's taken me way too long to put this program together. Months and months of blood, sweat and tears to put the Healthy AF Method together. But what I wanted to do was combine mindset and health, and I think I've done that. If you fancy embarking on a health transformation, if you want to help your healing, if you want to live the Healthy AF lifestyle, and I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast do, elevate your health IQ and become your own health advocate. And if you're interested in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, the stuff I've been talking a lot about on this podcast for many years, then every lesson in the course is based on a different NLP technique, which I love. You'll get to set and achieve health milestones and spark your health creativity and conquer your health anxieties as well. So if you fancy unlocking advanced techniques and transforming your health, then go to tonywrighton.com/healthy. There's also a community which has been brilliant actually. I'm really pleased with how that's going. That's a WhatsApp group where we've been having a little chat on there, and I just think the other thing to say is that the early testimonials that I'm getting from people who've been signed up to the course for the last couple of months have been gratifyingly nice. I'm so thrilled that people are finding it useful. So if you want to look at the most overlooked aspect of health, which is mindset, there's so many studies to prove how when you get it right, what's going on in your head, your health starts to improve. The link between mind and body is so well established, and yet it's the thing we ignore. Then go to tonywrighton.com/healthy, and I tell you what, if you use the discount code POD10, you can get 10% off. That is POD10. You'll get 10% off. tonywrighton.com/healthy. Now back to the show.
You're right about the themes having changed over time. As we've gone from, obviously we met on NLP training, didn't we, 20 years ago, and NLP is quite left-brained, quite, focused on, getting those outcomes actually ticked off and putting a date on them. by January the 21st, 2024, I will own £1 million or whatever it will be. And now that's not to say that I don't have goals, but as I spoke about last year on this podcast, my goals are now all process based. I sort of trust that if I do that amount of work, like, a certain amount of deep work, which isn't very ambitious, by the way, if I can do 2-3 hours of deep work a day, then I'll get the big goals done because I actually just need to get the process right. And then also allowing for the fact that over the years, your goals do change. And our friend Carl Morris always says this, doesn't he? Like he says he's worked with thousands of golfers and they all want the same goal, which is to win the Open. And if they don't, the ones that don't win the Open, which is nearly all of them, have they failed at life? Have they failed in everything they set out to do? No, because every day they're sort of celebrating with Carl their little victories of all the things that they've done, which have helped them move along the journey. And then their goals might change over time. They might want to win the Portuguese Open or just become a golf pro at their local course, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. So I've been looking at I've been thinking a lot more about process goals and giving my brain enough space to process. The processing the process. I'm going to call it that, Steve, because I told you about this one big domino idea before, didn't I? Did I tell you that?
Tell me again.
Okay, yeah, I can't remember if I did or not, but anyway, I think it might have been Tim Ferriss who said, one of the things he likes to do is everyone else has a big to-do list at the start of the day, and he, instead of embarking on his big to-do list, goes and sits in a nice coffee shop somewhere, sits down, has a coffee, doesn't open his laptop, and just looks out at the world and thinks about the one big domino that if he were able to knock over that, all the other dominoes would fall over, which is such a nice metaphor for actually thinking, it's not about, sending another email, is it? It's about how do you really think about the one thing that would crack everything?
I like that. I like the metaphor, definitely.
Yeah.
And, the first thing I do in the morning when I come into my study.
Your shed? Oh, no, sorry, your study, yeah.
Or my shed, yeah. I could be either. Is to meditate. And as you know, I always have done. And not for very long, maybe 5 minutes. And the background thought will be, how's this day going to unfold? What are the things, what are the priorities here? And what are the things that I can just let drift? And I particularly, going back to the domino, I like that because when we do have a goal and it's like out of reach or it's a very high stretch goal, very often other things happen along the way. Other people come into the equation. Life events take a role. World events take a role, and often the goal that we had gets changed anyway, or even if it stays the same. A lot of other people have come, or people have come that have helped us make what was a real challenge into actually feels like surfing the wave. Yeah.
And then for me, I think the other thing is to accept one's limitations, which actually circles back to what we started about at the beginning. It's a constant source of frustration to me that I don't have enough time to get all my work done. And when I actually think about it rationally, life is good. I've made the decision to be in Portugal, and I want to, I know I spend more time with my boy than probably 90% of dads. I'm so lucky like that. So I know that is actually what I want. And yet coming to terms and being at peace with only being able to do so much a day because of the demands of family life and a very short school day. And I've found that something that really helps with that is very similar to what you were talking about, but just at the start of a day, writing a list, and I'm going to be doing this for 2024 as well, of the 3 things I want to get done that day. Just 3. And once they're done, that's the work done. I can faff about with all the emails and everything else after that, but that is the work. And I think that helps me accept my limitations of time and ability a little bit more, which is working for me.
Sounds a very healthy diet.
Yeah. And then, I've been putting together this course over the last 6 months or so, which by the time this goes out will be out, the Healthy AF Method, which will be available on my website. And it is all, every lesson is a different NLP technique and how it links to health and how by optimizing your mindset, you can help your healing. And it's been so enjoyable going back and really thinking deeply about the NLP techniques and about which ones work. And right at the start of the course, I have sort of 3 principal modules. And then I've actually got a module right at the start of it before the big ones get underway, which is just about setting the outcomes. So where do you want to be in terms of your health? That's sort of important. But the really important bit is the process. How are you going to get there? What are you going to do every day to get you there? And the accountability is just such a massive part of that healthy AF method. It just doesn't work without being accountable. The more accountable you can be in terms of where you want to be, what you're doing every day, and who's keeping you on track has been such a massive thing for us. And I mean, I've told you before, but Faith and I have these WhatsApp groups that we use every day. But when we've worked out, when we've meditated, if we'd left the phone out of the bedroom at night, and you can just tell. I can tell if I've had the phone in the bedroom with me for the last week. It's there in black and white on the WhatsApp group, and she knows as well. That's what I mean by accountability. It's so powerful in getting stuff done. And I would recommend to anyone setting out to write their New Year's resolutions for 2024, that's better than any resolution. Set up a WhatsApp group with your other half or a mate or anyone, or me, if you haven't got anyone to do it with, and just message them every night with the thing that's really important to you. If I mean, I know that when I work out, it makes me feel better. So we just track the amount of minutes, and that keeps us on track.
That's a brilliant tip. It really is. And although you might regret it, because when you hit your target, you're going to have 1 million messages coming in every day, keeping track of you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that is very true. Yeah. So then, on a sort of bigger picture, I've really loved putting that course together in 2023, and I don't consider myself a procrastinator. I normally get things done quite quickly, but my goodness, it did take a long time. And these things do, don't they, when you want to get them right? I mean, you know what it's like. I remember you taking yourself off for weeks at a time to go and... Didn't you go to Brazil once to write a book?
I've written a book in Brazil, yeah. It was for 2 weeks, actually.
Yeah.
I've written several books in Portugal. And even then, I would book into a hotel, away from home, even if it's only half an hour's drive, and spend some time in isolation, walking these deserted beaches on my own and thinking about the book and how I could make sense of it all.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So that was the thinking time rather than just the doing.
It was both. I would do a lot of walking and thinking, and then I would do a bit of writing. I might do an hour's writing a day. But if I did all of the walking and unconscious thinking, by the time I was ready to actually get something down, it came out pretty much on its own.
Yeah. Now, before we go, Steve, every time we meet up, we met up a couple of months ago in London, and one of the many things that I always enjoy when we meet up is you always turn up with something you're very excited about. and last time we met each other, you couldn't wait to tell me about the injury you'd had. And I was like, that's a bit weird. He's very excited about having got injured. And then you'd brought me some of these things. I would describe them as plasters you put on you to help you energetically heal. But perhaps you could explain better than me what they were. And at that point, you'd only been trying it for a couple of weeks, and you'd been amazed by the healing ability of them. And I'd love to know how you feel about them now, because it's a couple of months on.
Well, okay. Well, I mentioned earlier that 2023 has been a consolidation year. And one of the things that I've done is I've reached out to more people. And I give 15-minute free consultation, discovery calls with people. And I don't think it's really done anything for my business, but I've met some really interesting people. And there was one particular lady from Sweden, and she was talking about these. It's called the super patch. She was telling me about these things, and I'm always interested to listen. But I have to say, I didn't see how these would be of any use to me, or if they'd be any use to anybody, frankly. But she said, I'm going to send you some samples and you can just try them out. Well, they arrived a few days later in the post. Let's say it was a Wednesday, probably was. And I opened the package and I looked at them and I just left them on the side and thought, okay, well, one day I will try them and see. On the Saturday morning, I do a park run, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners do. And I'm sure there's a park run where you are, Tony. Every Saturday morning, all over the world.
Yeah.
And I was over halfway into the run. It's 5K. And I suddenly had a painful, rip in my thigh, which I knew from previous experience was a hamstring injury. And I've had those before. And, speaking as a doctor as well, I know how long they take to get better. And I thought, oh, no, I could barely put any weight on. I literally had to limp back to the finish line. And I was thinking in my mind, this is going to take 2 months if I'm lucky. And I was thinking all the things that I wouldn't be able to do because I live a very active life. Mm. So I got home, I had my shower as best I could, hobbling around. And then I saw these patches. And I thought, well, now that was a good time to find out. So I stuck one of these patches on my leg. And
what are they supposed to do very quickly?
Well, I'll come to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to speed up. I can see we're running out of time.
Sorry. No, you're not at all. I don't.
Okay.
That was not good listening by me. Carry on.
Anyway, to cut a long story short, it didn't do anything for me the first day. The second day, I was able to get out of bed and I could walk with only a slight limp. The third day, I was able to walk outside for half an hour. The fourth day, I was able to do some very slow running on my treadmill. And on that probably, let's say it takes me to a Friday night. Friday night was a 9-hole golf competition followed by supper. And I won that by a mile. I played the best golf I'd played. But probably, it was years. On the Monday, which was our August bank holiday, there was a mixed competition and I had a partner. Yeah. And me and my partner won that big competition, again, by with a pretty good score. Mm. And so then, first of all, the thing most important is that I got over this injury and and a week later, I was actually in the park run again and my records are there. Yeah. It was a slow time by my standards. Yeah. But then 2 weeks later, I was hitting more or less the times I'd hit before.
And how long would that injury take to heal normally?
Well, normally, I've had these before. Normally, I'd say to patients, to 2 months. And I'd say definitely take it easy. First few weeks, let the body heal.
So, remind us, what is it supposed to do? What is this super patch supposed to do?
This is where it gets a bit complicated. Now, there is some, basically, this little patch, and in fact, I'm wearing 3 of them now. They've got little ridges like a fingerprint. The patches are about 5-6 centimeters square, and you just stick them on your skin. You can put them on your wrist or your leg, anywhere really that hasn't got air, because they have to stick to the skin. And the theory is that they're stimulating the sensory receptors underneath the skin, which are transmitting signals to the brain, which are helping the brain and the body to talk more to each other. Now, this is the science comes in. In 2022, the Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology was awarded to 2 scientists who wrote about the importance of skin perception, sensation perception. And with regard to pain, you get the same pain more or less, whichever part of your body, the nail goes in under the skin or whatever. And that's called the gate theory of pain. But now there's a theory of the haptic the haptic theory. So if there is any big if there is any science, it's got something to do with haptic communication and the sensors underneath our skin. But to me, on a practical level, it means it reinforces the belief that I've always had that touch is a very underestimated part of healing and of human communication.
Right.
This is why people go for massages and why people hug each other and why doctors should use touch. But we're in our society we have to be a little careful these days about how we touch other people.
Yeah. Well, of course, you trained in the havening, didn't you? And both of us are big fans of EFT and various different forms of energy psychology. So I'm fully on board with all of that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. As you know, we both know Paul McKenna, and he's very much into the having. And I told him this story about the patches, and I thought maybe there's a connection here somewhere.
Mm. And it just finally on the patches, do they sell it as having some sort of quantum energy component as well?
I don't think they actually use the word quantum.
Right.
Their marketing is pretty low key and pretty vague.
Yeah.
Which of course I think it has to be.
Yeah.
But most of these sales are generated, from word of mouth.
Yeah.
And I went to this conference in Germany, because I wanted to learn more about it. There were 1,200 people there, and I talked to a lot of people during that time, and they all had their own story about how the patches had helped them. That's why they were there.
Wow.
It wasn't because they'd been signed up by some big marketing organization.
Yeah. And you've got 3 on now. You still feeling good on it?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Brilliant. I enjoyed wearing it, and I think you put one on me, and I didn't sleep very well the first night that I wore it, but then I felt like I had loads of energy, so something was going on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you see, that might be a reprocessing.
Yeah. No, it might be. Absolutely. Yeah. Steve, so good. So we've got a couple of minutes left. What is one book you would recommend and one tip for living with energy and vitality in 2024? What are you going to go for? And I'm going to do a book today as well, because I never get to do a book. But at the start of 2024, I'm going to do one too.
Well, I don't know how many shows we've done, but this is the first time I've been prepared, and I've even got it written down in front of me.
Fantastic.
I've just finished this book. It's won a lot of awards. It's a bestseller, and it's called The Keeper of Stories. Have you heard about it?
No.
It's written by Sally Page. It's a simple book. It's a simple book about a cleaner, and she keeps the stories of the people that she works with. And she's a very observant person, which we were talking about earlier. She's forensically observant on the physical characteristics of the people that she cleans for, but also the psychology of the people. So it's the kind of book that I think I could recommend to just about anybody. Mm. It's not going to grip you and make you think, well, this is the best book that I've ever read, but it's a comforting book to read, an interesting, relaxing book to read.
Brilliant. Oh, that sounds great. I will look it up.
Yeah.
And then what about one tip for living with more energy and vitality? Did you prepare for that as well, Steve?
Well, I did. And I thought, well, let's tie it in with what we've been talking about, really. So one tip is just to listen more. Mm. And I think the expression I was looking for earlier, it's just come to me. It's being present, just to be more present. Mm. That's probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that is the secret to life, really, isn't it? And that really does involve listening to other people and to yourself.
Yeah. And my experience is that you get more out of it personally. And I suspect that the people that you're being present with get more out of the experience as well.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, and nowhere do you notice that more than when you're parenting. If you're parenting but keeping one eye on your phone, that is not presence, as I've learned occasionally. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I've got one book which I'm really enjoying. It's by a former Zestology guest called Paul F. Austin, and it's called Mastering Microdosing. And I'll do another podcast. I will explain Steve, you already know my full journey with this, but I will explain it fully on a future podcast. But it's very, very good. And he has been on Zestology. He promises me he'll come on again soon. So That's a good one.
Yeah, sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Steve, as always, I feel totally uplifted by talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on. And when this goes out, you will be in warmer climes, won't you? So have a super trip. And where can people find out more about you and everything you do with the clients and everything else?
Well, if they just Google my name, Dr. Stephen Simpson, that should hopefully give them my website address and Facebook and all the usual things. And I always welcome, comments or questions from anybody.
Yeah. Steve, really good. We'll do something again in person next time we see each other.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me again, Tony.
Thanks, Steve.
We could fit at least another one in next year.
Yeah, definitely. As long as you're in shed 1 or shed 2, that'd be great.
I will be. I'll be more authentic in my shed next time. Yeah.